10:34 at WILK. And it's our pleasure to welcome United States Senator Pat Toomey back to our show this morning on WILK. And back to the United States, I guess, too, right, Pat?
That's right. Good morning, Sue. How are you?
Good morning. You are just back from a trip to Afghanistan and Pakistan.
That is correct.
When did you get back?
Got back last night.
Okay, so this is new information that you're bringing us this morning on WILK, and I'm happy to hear it. Recently in the news, Senator Toomey, we've seen to hear less and less and less about what is happening in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they are areas of great concern. I understand also that they are also very complex areas to understand. So when you were there, what kind of, I know this is just a short question and the answer will be long, what kind of insights did you glean from this trip?
Well, it's hard to know where to begin. It was just a terrific opportunity for me to spend a day in Pakistan, 2 days in Afghanistan, and meet with rank-and-file soldiers and airmen, and meet with senior military leaders, including General Petraeus, to meet with President Karzai and the Chief of Staff of the Pakistan Army, General Kayani, and in the process to really get a much better understanding of the challenges that we face, the progress that we've made, which I want to talk about that a little bit. There's really been tremendous progress. But frankly, it's still fragile and it's still reversible, and we've got a ways to go before we can say confidently that we've succeeded and the mission is over.
Okay, first the parts that are positive or good or what you discovered.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just tell you, it is impossible to go there and see what I saw and not be enormously impressed with our armed forces. I mean, the men and women that we met are so professional, so dedicated. They are working so hard and just doing a phenomenal job. So you just got to be so proud of the men and women in uniform, and a lot of civilians who are now on the ground in Afghanistan, really doing a fantastic job. The other very good news is the change in strategy that President Obama decided on last year is really making tremendous progress. It was not just the increase in the troop level, although that was a necessary part of it, but it was the decision to adopt a classic counterinsurgency approach as opposed to simply hunting terrorists. The difference is the strategy in a counterinsurgency is to protect the civilian population so that they don't seek to become part of the insurgency, and as opposed to simply hunting down and killing the bad guys. Now, we still do that, but we do that while at the same time making sure that we're protecting the civilian population. That wins over the local population, who then start to give you, invaluable information about where the enemy is, what they've done, and these folks start to really buy into a new Afghanistan that will be permanently rid of the Taliban. So we've made tremendous progress. There are huge areas, especially in the south of the country that I visited, that just a year ago the Taliban had made resurgence. They had taken over and were in control of some of these areas. Now they are gone, and it's looking increasingly hopeful that they will not be able to come back.
Okay, you talked about the people on the ground there and trying to win them over. At the same time, isn't the other side trying to win them over too? And doesn't that make it very complex? And number two, you're talking about hunting down and killing the bad guys. Is it easy for our military to know their enemy?
It's becoming increasingly possible to consistently be able to distinguish the enemy from the civilian population. And I have to tell you, the Taliban were never popular in most of Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan are very conservative, devout Muslims, and they do live, in a social and cultural order that we wouldn't be comfortable with. But they never liked the brutality of the Taliban. I mean, the extortion extortion and the criminal activity that was going on. None of that had any appeal. The only thing the Taliban did is provided some semblance of governance where there was none,
right.
And even that wasn't something that the people liked very much. So, I had a chance to walk around with an interpreter and just walk up to people in a crowded village and ask what they thought. And universally, they were delighted that they love the Marines. The Marines are the ones who control that section of Afghanistan. They're enormously grateful. They are worried a little bit about whether the Marines will leave before they have been able to build up their own police and army force to continue to protect them, but they're very grateful for what we've done.
So you're at a very fragile state over there right now, I guess is a good way to put it. And do you see, oh boy, it's just so difficult to, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and they're explaining the complexity of how that country is kind of split apart into, these 5 areas and stuff. And it just seems to me that it's a very difficult situation. Is there light at the end of the tunnel here?
Well, I think there really is. One of the things, unfortunately, we didn't get all of the pieces pulled together until very recently, and that's unfortunate. One classic case in point is that we kind of delegated the job of building up an Afghan army to others who were not getting the job done. Now we've put serious resources into this. We visited a 43,000-acre training site where Afghans are being trained to have a professional army. Look, it's not going to be our army, but an army that's at least competent, can fight off the enemy, and can hold the ground that we have cleared. It was interesting. A group of these guys came into a small formation, and looking at their faces, you could clearly see totally different ethnic groups. You saw a face that looked very Asian, could be Chinese. You saw a face that looked like someone who would be from India. You saw other face. You had a red-headed guy with green eyes. It's amazing the ethnic diversity just in this little group. But they have really bought into the idea that they are there to defend Afghanistan. They feel part of this country. And yeah, they're still Pashtun or Uzbekis and Tajiks. There are different ethnic groups that they're still part of. But there is a sense of nationhood, and that is not a completely artificial construct.
Okay. I do want to talk about the debt ceiling, but I also have to know where we stand on the clock. Are you able to stay a little bit longer or not?
I could stay for one more segment.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to put United States Senator Pat Toomey on hold. He has just returned from this overseas. We have a United States Senator from Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, with us this morning on WILK, who just got back from an overseas trip and is also the author of an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal. Geez, Pat, you're not wasting any time here, huh?
Well, there's a lot to do, Sue. So actually, I banged out that op-ed yesterday morning. We had landed in London, not in London, outside London at a British air base on our way back from Kabul. And I had a few hours on my hands, so I wrote that because I've been thinking about this a great deal, and we've really got to get spending under control in Washington, and this is an opportunity to make some progress in that direction. Okay,
give us the Reader's Digest condensed version of your editorial.
Well, as I said, spending's out of control. It's driven up massive deficits and unsustainable debt. We're going to have few opportunities to really force the administration to cut spending. One of them is this vote over whether or not to raise the debt ceiling. Now, some people have tried to suggest that you have no choice. You just have to raise the debt ceiling because otherwise the United States government will default on its debt. And that's just factually not true. And so I explain in my op-ed that even if the debt ceiling is not raised, there'll be more than sufficient tax revenue collected by the government to easily pay all of the interest on our debt and make sure we don't default. Therefore, I think we have to be willing to vote no on an increase in the debt ceiling unless we get real spending cuts and real process reform so that we can get our budget under control. And that's the position I think we should take. And hopefully the president will come along with us, and then we'll begin to get our fiscal house in order.
Well, I mean, it's when I look at, say, if you have a credit card and you just pay the minimum payment or anything, it's just kind of keeping the wolf at the door. But what you're saying is at least keep him at the door, don't let him in the house, and don't let him eat off the table by creating more and more and more debt.
Well, exactly. You know, the most important measure of the fiscal health of a country is the amount of debt that it has as a percentage of its total economy. Now, it's like a person, right? I mean, if I had $1 million mortgage on my house, I'd be in big trouble because I can't afford $1 million mortgage. But Bill Gates can have $1 million mortgage, and he wouldn't even notice it because of the wealth that he has. Well, similarly, a country can have a certain amount of debt, but it has to be manageable relative to the size of its economy. And ours is growing so fast that it's on a path to eclipse the total size of all of our economic output. And that's just way too big to be manageable. So we've really got to get this under control, and I just don't think we can waste any time.
Okay, one more question. We've been watching as the president of China arrives in the United States for talks with our president. Pat, you've been in international business. What should we do very quickly again in our relationship with China, and what do you think that our president should tell the Chinese president?
Well, I think we've got to be tough about enforcing some of the agreements that we have. The Chinese have not been very good about observing things like intellectual property rights, a very, very important and fundamental right. They've not been good about allowing investment in their country unless they also get a technology transfer as part of it in ways that are often inappropriate. So there are things that I think the president can and should pressure the Chinese government. You know, they make little incremental progress on these things typically, but if we put enough pressure, I think we could accelerate that progress.
Donald Trump was on TV yesterday saying that we should levy more taxes on them when they bring goods and when goods are brought into the United States. How do you feel about that?
Well, the problem with that is, what do you say to the single mom who's struggling to make ends meet now, and what you want to do is tax her further, make sure that when she goes out and buys back-to-school clothes for her kids or Christmas presents for her kids, that she has to pay more for those things. I'm not sure that's such a good idea. I really it would be very reluctant to impose that tax on American consumers because that's who ends up paying for it.
All right, Pat Toomey, it's always great to have you on the show. Thank you for calling us, and welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Sue.